Well, hello there and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Casey and I'm the designer behind Pattern Scout. I design sewing patterns and sell sewing patterns on my website, patternscoutstudio.com, and I also run this YouTube channel where I share all sorts of sewing related content. And today I wanted to try out and review for you the Lutterloh pattern drafting system. I first heard about this pattern drafting kit on the With Wendy YouTube channel. I love her channel. I watch pretty much every episode she comes out with, and she has recently drafted a few patterns using this kit that turned out pretty cool, and I was immediately intrigued the first time she shared this pattern kit on her channel. So a couple of months ago I finally decided to bite the bullet, buy the kit, and try it out for myself. And the kit is a little bit pricey. It's about $150 for the kit, but when you factor in the number of patterns that you get, it's actually a pretty good deal. So the initial kit comes with about 280 patterns. It also includes all the tools that you need to create the patterns, except for pattern paper. You'll have to buy pattern paper on your own. But yeah, I think all in all, it's a pretty good deal if you like the patterns that are in the kit. And they also have what they call supplements. So they have seasonal pattern releases of about 40 patterns for about $20 that you can add to the kit. So the basic concept is that you just need 2 measurements to draft hundreds of patterns, and the system uses a special ruler with little holes in it for each of your body measurements, and you just pin that to these little pattern templates and plot out points around the pattern template to create a full-size pattern. So I was really intrigued by this idea and I wanted to see if it lived up to the promise. I'm going to be making a dress using this kit and giving you my thoughts on the whole process. I picked a really simple project to start out with, not just because it's simple, but because I actually really wanted to make this type of dress. I think this would be a really cute black linen dress. Also, I'm kind of trying to hang on to summer a little bit longer. I really don't want summer to be over, even though fall is fast approaching. But yeah, I really liked this very simple dress here. And as you can see on the back of each of the pages, there are kind of the pattern templates. And you just use these little templates here to plot out all of the points of the pattern. So if you look closely, there's a little X mark for, let's see, right there and right there at the bust on this particular pattern. Then you'll use that ruler to put a pin at that little X mark and then start plotting out the points based on the measurements that are indicated on this little pattern. So I think this will be pretty straightforward. I do have a couple of theories about how this is going to work out. I'm guessing these patterns are probably drafted to a pretty standard drafting standard and that the bust is probably drafted for a B cup. I am actually a C cup bust, so I may have to make some adjustments there. And then also my hip to waist ratio is a little bit wider, a little bit larger than most patterns are drafted for, so I may have to make a little bit of adjustments at the waist and potentially take in the waist darts a little bit more. Those are pretty minor adjustments that I think I can make pretty confidently. So the tools that I'll be using are just the tools in the kit. I've got the measuring tape. There are little push pins for securing the tape to the pattern and to your pattern paper, and then there is some Scotch tape, a little French curve for drafting the curved portions of the pattern, although I don't think I'll have a lot of curved parts of this particular pattern. Then I also finally bought some craft paper to draft my patterns on, and I'm actually gonna not make a muslin for this just because this is such a simple garment. I will measure the pattern to make sure that it's gonna fit me in the hips and the bust. But I think as far as fitting goes, it'll be pretty straightforward for fitting because it is basically just kind of a sheath with darts. So anyhow, let's get started. This measurement here, I need it to be 13.5, and it's actually going to be on top of the pattern paper. So in that case, what I'm going to do is use my little push pin here, just put that through the paper, because I don't really want to pick this up yet. Now I want to switch to my hip measurement. I'm going to take the pin out, and my hip measurement is about 109 and some change, so I'm just going to go up to 110 for that and put my pin in that mark. And I'll put it back on the little cross and keep going. am going to try to put in some of the pattern information here. So I'm going to assume that this is the center back and that that's on grain. So I'm going to put a grain line like so. This will be cut on the fold, so I just want to make sure I make myself a note here. So as far as the waistline, I'm just going to true that with the center back. So I'm going to basically make it a right angle from the center back. I'm using my quilting ruler here to kind of get an idea of where that is. And then I'll just mark that across. Okay, so this is the front bodice. I'll make myself a note there. And then I just need to go around and add seam allowance to the entire pattern, but not this side because this will be cut on the fold. For this pattern, I'm just going to do a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And for the bottom, I'll actually do an inch seam allowance, just to be on the safe side. Yeah, and as for that dart that goes here, I'm just not sure how I want to do that. Let's see. All right, I'm just going to draft the dart just using my own knowledge of how to draft a dart. I measured from the center of the dart point out 1.5 inches because that is kind of a standard rule for how far back you pull the dart point from the bust apex. So I did 1.5 inch measurement here, and then I measured down straight from there on grain another 1.5 inches to get the top of the dart point for the fisheye dart that'll go here. Then I used the measurement that was indicated on the pattern template, which was 28 centimeters, and just measured down to here. So that this portion right here will be the fisheye dart. Eventually I'll go in and figure out how much I need to take in for the dart intake, and then I will draft that fisheye dart here. So I'm gonna cut this out, and then I will draft the other piece of this pattern, the back bodice. And to draft the back fisheye dart here, it's going to be a little easier because the point of that dart is right at the little crosshairs here where I had the pin. So I'll just measure down 30 centimeters for the length of this, and then again I will do a calculation to see how wide I need to make that dart. So to calculate the dart intake for the waist, I'm just going to measure the waist of the front and the back, and I'm measuring this without the seam allowance. And then the back, so 9.625 plus 9.125, 18.75 times 2, 37.5 inches, and my waist is actually 30 inches equals 7.5. I have 4 total darts, so I'll divide that by 4, and I get 1.875 for each of the darts. Okay, so I have a few thoughts on the whole drafting process now that I've got this first pattern drafted. First of all, the drafting process was really simple and straightforward, and I really liked that. It went very, very quickly. The only thing that slowed me down a little bit was a few kind of reservations I had as I was going through the process, some things that kind of made me start second guessing the draft. I kind of expected that the draft would basically be, you know, a scale blow up on center from that little template, if that makes sense. But as I was drafting, the draft actually was a little bit skewed from center, which kind of threw me off. And I wasn't sure if that was going to be a big issue or not once I got the whole thing drafted. And I don't think it is now that I've got it drafted and kind of laid it out on my table. And that also just made me second guess where I was going to put the grain line, the hip line, the bust line, that type of benchmark pattern information. So it did kind of make me second guess that, and I was kind of scratching my head a little bit through that process. But I do think I figured it out. And one more thing about the drafting kind of being a little skewed, I wish it was a little bit more apparent kind of where to place that little template on your pattern paper when you're drafting to kind of conserve your paper, because I did feel like I kind of had to scoot it toward the middle of my paper, and I probably ended up using twice as much paper to do that because, you know, I couldn't fit two pieces of the pattern side by side on my pattern paper, so that kind of bugged me a little bit. And again, maybe moving forward as I get more familiar with the system, I'll be able to kind of predict that a little bit better. On top of that, I do wish that they had given a little bit more instruction about how to place the fisheye dart at the waist. So on the back draft, it was a little bit easier to figure that out because it did extend directly from the little crosshairs where you put the pin in. On the front, it was a little bit off from that. So I had to kind of use my drafting experience and knowledge to create a dart from scratch. Now that kind of dart is actually not that difficult to create as you're fitting the garment. You can kind of just pinch it out and decide where you want that and then add that to your pattern. But it would have been nice, I think, to have a little bit more instruction on that part of it. And that is one of the areas where I think that having a little bit of drafting knowledge is helpful. And I think once you kind of work through the initial kind of head scratchers like that I just described, then you can kind of anticipate that for the future projects that you do with this kit, and they'll probably go even faster. So, oh, another thing that I did too was I went through and measured the pattern widths at the key locations at the bust, the waist, and the hips, and I also measured the length of the dress. It looks like it's going to fit just fine. You know, I might have to make a few little adjustments, but I think it'll be just fine. Although I am going to add just a little bit of extra ease to the hips, like maybe a 1/2 inch at the side seam for the front and the back, just to be extra sure that I'm going to have enough ease in that area, because I'm always nervous about things being too tight in the hips. Anyway, that is the plan. I'm going to lay out my fabric now. I'm going to trace around the pattern with my Choco liner, and then I will start cutting everything out and go through the assembly process. Went through and sewed all of the darts in both the front bodice and the back bodice of this dress. For the bust darts, I went ahead and just sewed those as I would normally. And then for the waist darts, I actually decided to baste those in, so I just changed my sewing machine stitch length to the longest stitch length, so mine is a 6mm stitch length, and I use that to baste in the darts. That way if I need to move the darts, it'll be pretty easy to pull out those basting stitches, so I just kind of left the thread tails a little long here. Also, I went through and serged all of the side seam edges and the center back edges, just to kind of help keep the edges of the fabric from fraying too much. And I also stay stitched the top of the bodice on both the back and the front, and a stay stitch is just a regular stitch length, just kind of helps keep the fabric from getting stretched out before you have a chance to sew in all the facings and all of that, because I will be trying this on to test the fit. Now I'm going to prepare the facings, and I'll just cut some interfacing to match the facing pieces for both the front and the back. I'm going to match the interfacing pieces right sides together and sew along the bottom edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to flip that to the wrong side and then press it to adhere it to the facing. And I just like that method for constructing the facings. It's just a lot neater and it kind of cleans up that bottom edge. Then I will attach the facings to their corresponding bodice pieces at the top of the bodice, and I'm going to sew those on with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, right sides together. Then I will trim down the seam allowance to about, I don't know, maybe like a 1/4 inch. Then I'll press that toward the facing, and I'm going to understitch it to the facing. I've got the two back bodice pieces right sides together, and I've just pinned them along that center back seam there, and I made sure to open up the facings when I did that. So I'm just going to sew a basting stitch at 3/8 inch all the way down the center back seam. Then I'm going to come in and press that seam open, and I will install the zipper, just baste it in place where I want it. then I'll just seam rip open the part with the zipper in it. Then I can baste the invisible zipper right next to the zipper teeth so that it is actually an invisible zipper. Once I do that, I can assemble the rest of the dress by sewing the back to the front, and I'll be able to try this on. And like I mentioned before, I'm just going to baste all of the side seams at this point just to make sure that it fits. Then once I know that it fits me, I will go in and sew with a regular stitch and permanently install the invisible zipper in the back. So I will need to just take this in a little bit at the top here, which is that's not hard to do at all. Actually, that's a pretty easy fix. I'm pretty happy with the dart location at the front. The one that I drafted here on the front, I think that's pretty good. And I actually probably did not even need to add the extra ease in the skirt. I mean, I still have quite a bit here, so I probably will slim that down a little bit. Another thing that I did was I forgot to leave space up here to insert the straps, which is not a huge deal. So I'll just go in, I'll have to kind of seam rip open some of the facing here and insert the straps when I get to that point. But I am glad that I went ahead and added the facings because it kind of gives me a pretty good idea of how this is going to fit at the high bust. And then as far as the back, I'm getting a little bit of a ducktail situation here with the zipper. I think if this is a little bit more snug and everything is sitting more where it's supposed to be once I get the straps on, I'll be able to tell a little bit better. But overall, I mean, these are all pretty easy fit fixes, and I'm pretty happy with the direction this is going. Once again, it is getting extremely warm in my sewing room, so I think I'm going to call it quits for today. And then tomorrow I'll come in and just make the adjustments. Anyway, that's the plan. I will see you tomorrow, which will be just a few, less than a second for you. I finished the top of the zipper by folding the facing right sides together over the top of the zipper and then stitched along the edge of the facing. Now I'm just going to trim the corner here, trim off the end of the zipper. I also folded the top of the zipper into the seam allowance just so that it would finish the top there before I stitch this closed. Now I can just turn this right side out so that the top of the zipper is now concealed, which is kind of hard to see. You can see how that looks from the interior, and I did this on both sides at the top of the zipper. Now I'm just going to pin the straps temporarily to the back of the dress and kind of guess where I think I want them, and then I will take this over to the mirror and position the straps on the front and kind of adjust as needed based on how I want this to look. Before I permanently attach the strap, I just want to go ahead and adjust the fit and try it on again, see how I like that. I don't want it to be too tight. I would like this to kind of be somewhat fitted. I'm really happy with the location of the darts. I kind of guesstimated on the waist darts, as you know. Also, I've talked about these before, but I'm actually wearing the nippies, which are these little silicone nipple covers. And I've been wearing them a lot lately, and they have replaced a bra for me in a lot of ways. They're not supportive at all, but I do plan to wear those with this dress. And so I always recommend, whatever you're making for yourself, you wear the undergarments or the products that you plan to wear under your garments while you're doing your fitting, just so you can kind of make sure that everything's going to work out all right. Because if I was wearing a regular bra with this, it probably would add a little extra circumference to my bust. Since I have the nippies on, I'm not going to have as much kind of bust to fill out this dress. So that's something I want to keep in mind. But I don't want it to be so tight that I couldn't wear a bra with it, if I decided I wanted to wear a bra with it. Anyhow, that's kind of where my head is at on that. I'm pretty close to being done with this, and I'm actually pretty happy with this dress. And whatever changes I make to the dress, I will update the pattern that I created to reflect those changes. That way I'll kind of have a head start on the fitting process the next time I make this. I could totally see this dress pattern being used in a bunch of different ways. It's so simple and basic. I think you could do a lot of little things to kind of hack the pattern and add ruffles and even a tiered skirt or a ruffle top, or do something fun with the sleeves. I could also see cutting off the skirt and making it into a really cute little crop top to wear with my linen pants that I made last week. So yeah, I really like where this pattern is going. I know it's a very simple, basic pattern. I'm kind of basic in my fashion choices. I like things that are classic and simple, and I like patterns that I can use over and over and over again, and I think this is definitely going to be one of those patterns. So I'm going to go forward, making the changes I need to make. I'm going to take in the side seams, try on the dress again, and once I get that where I want it, I will permanently install the straps and add a hem to the bottom of the dress. One of the questions that I had when I was starting this project was, is this a suitable kit for beginners? And I think that just really depends on the kind of beginner that you are. If you're the kind of person that likes to just jump into projects and figure it out as you go along, maybe this would be just fine for you, and you might face a few challenges, but you could probably work through them if you're tenacious enough. But if you find that you are easily frustrated by drafting, or if you've never drafted before, maybe save this one for a little bit later down the road after you have a little bit more experience under your belt. There are no instructions in the booklet for constructing each individual pattern, so it is a good idea to have some sewing experience before you buy this kit and understanding how garments go together. They do have some instructions in the beginning of the book for kind of general sewing techniques, but as far as step-by-step tutorials for how to put the garments together, that's not available in these kits. But if you are comfortable doing some light drafting and you want some easy drafting projects, I definitely recommend this kit. It was a lot of fun. It goes really fast. It's a really great idea. I think it's a really great product, and I definitely plan to make more of the garments that are in the booklet included with the kit. Okay, I think that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed today's video and you'd like to see more from me, please be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell icon. That way you'll be notified when I release new videos in the future. All right, I will see you in the next video. Bye.